The spray paint glistened under the streetlight. A venomous red slash across the hood of Marcus Grant's car. FAG. The word hit like a fist, stealing his breath as he stood frozen in his driveway. The quiet of the Ohio suburb shattered by the ugliness before him. At 45, Marcus had faced hate before. But this was his home. His sanctuary. Now defiled. He traced the jagged letters with trembling fingers. The cold metal of his BMW stinging his skin. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks. The side mirrors dangling like broken limbs. His neighbor, Carl Hensley, had stood on his porch just hours ago, spitting slurs with a beer in hand. His face twisted with disgust when Marcus had waved politely. Marcus had moved to this small town of Willow Creek 2 years ago, seeking peace after decades in Chicago's legal trenches. A black, openly gay judge in a conservative county knew he'd be a target. But he hadn't expected this. The crunch of gravel snapped him out of his daze. Across the street, a figure approached, hesitant but steady. Ethan Walsh, 32, the quiet bookstore owner who lived 3 houses down, stopped a few feet away, his blue eyes wide with shock. "Marcus, what the hell happened?" His voice was soft, but there was a fire in it, a righteous anger that mirrored Marcus's own. "I don't know, Ethan," Marcus lied, his voice low, barely masking the rage simmering beneath. He didn't want to say Carl's name, didn't want to give the man that power. But Ethan's gaze lingered, searching, and Marcus felt the weight of his kinness, a rare thing in Willow Creek, where whispers followed him like shadows. Ethan stepped closer, his sneakers scuffing the pavement. He was younger, wiry, with a mop of brown hair and a face that carried both boyish charm and a quiet strength. He'd moved to town a year ago, running the only bookstore for miles, a place Marcus visited often, drawn to Ethan's warmth and the way he seemed to see past the labels others pinned on him. They'd shared coffee, conversations about literature and justice, and a cautious friendship that felt like it could be more if Marcus allowed it. "This is bullshit," Ethan said, his voice breaking. He reached out, then stopped, his hand hovering as if unsure whether touch would be welcome. "You don't deserve this." Marcus forced a smile, brittle and thin. "Deserve's got nothing to do with it." He looked back at the car, the hateful words screaming at him. He was a judge. Damn it. He'd spent his life upholding the law, fighting for fairness in a world that rarely returned the favor. Yet here he was, reduced to a target in his own driveway. The next morning, Marcus stood before his bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie with practiced precision. His dark skin gleamed under the light, his broad shoulders squared despite the exhaustion in his eyes. He was due in court in an hour, presiding over a case involving a local business dispute. But the image of his car burned in his mind, a reminder that even here, in the supposed safety of Willow Creek, he was never truly safe. He drove a rental to the courthouse, the sleek black sedan a poor substitute for his own. The town square was quaint, with its brick buildings and American flags flapping in the breeze. But Marcus felt to stare some curious, some hostility as he parked. Willow Creek was 80% white, and though the town prided itself on its Midwest values, those values often came with a side of suspicion for anyone who didn't fit the mold. Inside the courthouse, Marcus donned his robe, the weight of it grounding him. The courtroom was his domain, where he could wield reason and justice to carve out a sliver of fairness. But as he took his seat at the bench, he couldn't shake the memory of Carl's sneer, the way the man had muttered unnatural under his breath when Marcus had hosted a small barbecue last summer, inviting a few colleagues and Ethan. The day dragged, each motion and objection a blur. By noon, Marcus needed air. He stepped outside, the autumn chill biting through his suit. That's when he saw Ethan again, standing across the street, holding 2 coffees and a paper bag. "Thought you might need this," Ethan said, offering a shy smile and a cup. "And a donut. Chocolate glaze. Seemed like your kind of day." Marcus chuckled, the sound surprising him. "You're too good to me, Ethan." He took the coffee, their fingers brushing for a moment longer than necessary. Ethan's eyes held his, steady and warm, and Marcus felt a spark of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years: hope. Maybe. Or the ghost of desire. But hope was dangerous in a place like Willow Creek. As they stood there, chatting about nothing and everything, a truck roared by. Too close. The driver leaning out to yell, "Keep it in the closet. Freaks." The words hit like a slap, and Marcus saw Ethan flinch, his face paling. "Don't," Marcus said quietly, stopping Ethan before he could respond. "They're not worth it." But inside, his heart pounded, a mix of fury and shame. He was a judge, a man who'd clawed his way through law school, through years of prejudice, to sit on the bench. And still, he was reduced to this. That night, Marcus sat in his living room, the lights low, a glass of bourbon in hand. His phone buzzed. Ethan, texting to check in. "You okay? I'm here if you need me." Marcus stared at the words, his thumb hovering over the reply button. He wanted to say yes, to invite Ethan over, to let the walls he'd built crumble just a little. But the car, the graffiti, Carl's hatred, it all loomed too large. Instead, he typed, "I'm fine. Thanks." He hit send, then set the phone down, the bourbon burning his throat as he swallowed. Outside, the neighborhood was silent, but Marcus knew the quiet was a lie. Something was coming, something uglier than a vandalized car. And when it did, he'd have to decide: fight or flee, love or hide. The next day, Marcus filed a police report, though he knew it was futile. Sheriff Daniels, a gruff man with a handshake like a vice, took his statement with a perfunctory nod. "We'll look into it, Judge Grant," he said, but his eyes slid away, and Marcus caught the unspoken truth: this wasn't a priority. Willow Creek's police force was small, and hate crimes, especially against someone like Marcus, rarely saw follow through. Back home, he found Ethan waiting on his porch, a toolbox at his feet. "Thought I'd help clean up the car," Ethan said, his voice steady but his hands fidgeting. "If you're okay with that." Marcus hesitated. Accepting help felt like admitting weakness, but Ethan's earnestness disarmed him. "All right," he said finally, "but only if you let me buy you dinner after." Ethan's grin was like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Deal." They worked side by side, scrubbing the paint off the hood, the silence between them comfortable yet charged. Marcus caught himself stealing glances at Ethan, his focused expression, the way his hands moved with care. For a moment, the world felt smaller, safer, just the two of them against the ugliness. But the peace didn't last. As they finished, Carl's truck rumbled into his driveway across the street. The man stepped out, his flannel shirt straining over his belly, his eyes narrowing as he saw them. "You two make a cute couple," he called, his voice dripping with mockery. "Town's got no place for your kind." Ethan tensed, but Marcus laid a hand on his arm. "Ignore him," he murmured, though his own blood boiled. Carl laughed, a harsh, grating sound, and disappeared into his house. Marcus felt the weight of every slur, every stare, pressing down on him. He was a judge, respected in court, but out here, he was just a target. That evening, over pizza at Marcus's kitchen table, Ethan broke the silence. "Why do you stay here, Marcus? You could go back to Chicago, somewhere you're safer." Marcus set his slice down, his jaw tight. I've been running my whole life. Ethan. From foster homes. From bullies. From people who saw my skin or my love as a crime. I'm done running. This is my home now. Ethan's eyes softened. But there was pain there too. I get it. I worry about you. This town, it's not kind to people like us. Us. Marcus raised an eyebrow, a teasing edge to his voice despite the ache in his chest. Ethan blushed, looking away. You know what I mean. I'm not exactly waving a rainbow flag, but I've never hidden who I am. He paused, then added softly, I like you, Marcus, a lot. The words hung in the air, heavy with possibility. Marcus wanted to reach across the table, to bridge the gap, but fear held him back. He'd loved before, in secret, in shadows, and it had cost him friends, family, pieces of himself. Could he risk that again? Before he could answer, a crash echoed from outside. They rushed to the window to see Marcus's mailbox toppled, its metal dented, a brick lying beside it. Carl's porch light was on, his silhouette visible through the blinds. That's it, Ethan growled, starting for the door. Marcus grabbed his arm, pulling him back. Don't, he said, his voice firm. He wants a reaction. Don't give it to him. Ethan's fists clenched, but he nodded, stepping back. They stood there, shoulder to shoulder, staring out at the darkness. Marcus felt the heat of Ethan's presence, the unspoken promise of something more. But the brick, the graffiti, it was a warning. Carl wasn't done. The next week was a blur of court cases and sleepless nights. Marcus kept his head high, but the strain was wearing him down. He saw Ethan daily now, coffee runs, quick chats at the bookstore, moments that felt stolen from a better world. Each time, the pull between them grew stronger. But so did the fear. Willow Creek was watching, and Carl was always there, a shadow lurking across the street. One evening, Marcus found a note taped to his door, leave or pay. No signature, but he knew. He called the sheriff again, who promised to keep an eye out. Frustration gnawed at him. He was a judge. Damn it. Not some helpless victim. But what could he do? Confront Carl and risk escalation? Or stay silent and let the hate fester? He invited Ethan over, needing his steadiness. They sat on the couch, a movie playing ignored in the background. I'm tired, Ethan, Marcus admitted, his voice raw. Tired of fighting just to exist. Ethan slid closer, his hand finding Marcus's. You're not alone, he said softly. I'm here. Whatever happens. Their fingers intertwined, and for the first time in years, Marcus let himself lean into someone else. The kiss that followed was tentative, then desperate, a release of all the fear and longing they'd both buried. But even as warmth flooded through him, Marcus couldn't shake the dread. Carl was out there, and hate like his didn't stop at a brick. The kiss lingered in Marcus's mind, a fragile light in the storm of his days. But the note, leave or pay, was a splinter under his skin, impossible to ignore. He hadn't told Ethan about it, not wanting to burden him. But the weight of it grew heavier each time he passed Carl's house. The man's glare a silent threat. In court, Marcus was a pillar of calm, ruling on cases with the precision he'd honed over years. But outside, Willow Creek was unraveling him. The stares had grown bolder, the whispers louder. At the grocery store, a woman he didn't know muttered "sinner" as she passed. At the gas station, a teenager snickered, eyeing Marcus's rental car. He felt like a stranger in his own life. Ethan noticed. Over coffee at his bookstore, he reached across the counter, his fingers brushing Marcus's wrist. You're carrying too much, He said quietly, "Talk to me." Marcus sighed, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "It's not just Carl. It's this town. I thought I could change it. Show them I'm more than their prejudices. But maybe I was wrong." Ethan's jaw tightened. "You're not wrong. You're stronger than they'll ever be. And you've got me." The words were a lifeline, but Marcus couldn't fully grasp it. He wanted to believe in Ethan, in them, but the note burned in his pocket. That night, he drove to the sheriff's office, demanding action. Sheriff Daniels leaned back in his chair, his expression skeptical. "No proof it's Carl. Judge. Could be kids. A prank." "A prank." Marcus's voice was steel. "My car's destroyed. My mailbox smashed. And now a threat on my door. You call that a prank?" Daniels shrugged. "We'll patrol more. But you know how it is. Small town. Folks talk." Marcus left, fury simmering. He was a judge, respected by colleagues across the state. Yet here he was, dismissed like a nuisance. Back home, he found Ethan waiting, his face pale. "I saw Carl," Ethan said. "He was watching your house. I think he's planning something." Marcus's stomach twisted. "Stay out of it. Ethan. Please." "I can't," Ethan said, his voice fierce. "I care about you. I'm not letting him hurt you." The words cracked something open in Marcus. He pulled Ethan close, their foreheads touching, the world narrowing to just them. "I don't want you caught in this," he whispered. "It's my fight." "It's ours," Ethan corrected, and Marcus felt the truth of it, terrifying and exhilarating. The next day, Marcus decided to act. He installed security cameras, small and discreet, around his property. If Carl struck again, he'd have proof. But the cameras caught more than he expected. Late that night, reviewing the footage, he saw Carl creeping across his lawn, a can of spray paint in hand. The man's face was clear, his sneer unmistakable as he scrawled another slur on Marcus's garage door. Marcus's hands shook as he saved the footage. This was evidence, undeniable. He could press charges, drag Carl into court, make him face consequences. But as he stared at the screen, doubt crept in. Would the town back him? Or would they close ranks, protecting one of their own? He called Ethan, needing his voice. "I've got him," Marcus said, explaining the footage. "But I don't know if it's enough." "It's enough," Ethan said firmly. "You're a judge. Marcus, use the law. Show them who you are." The next morning, Marcus filed a formal complaint, handing the footage to Sheriff Daniels. The sheriff's face was unreadable as he watched, but he nodded. "We'll bring him in for questioning." That afternoon, Marcus sat in his chambers, preparing for a hearing, when his phone buzzed. It was Ethan, his voice urgent. "Carl's at the bookstore. He's drunk, yelling about you. I'm calling the cops, but you need to know." Marcus's heart raced. He grabbed his coat and drove to the bookstore, the small shop glowing warmly against the gray afternoon. Inside, Carl stood at the counter, his face red, spitting venom. "You think you're untouchable, Judge. You and your boyfriend won't last here." Ethan stood firm, his voice steady. "Get out, Carl. Now." Marcus stepped inside, his presence silencing the room. "Enough," he said, his voice low but commanding. "You've crossed a line, Carl, and I have proof." Carl's eyes widened, but he laughed. A hollow sound. "Proof? You're nothing here. Just a judge." Marcus cut in. "I'm a judge, and you're under arrest." The words hung in the air, heavy with power. Sheriff Daniels arrived moments later, cuffing Carl as he sputtered, his bravado crumbling. Marcus met Ethan's eyes, a silent promise passing between them. This wasn't over, but it was a start. Carl's arrest sent ripples through Willow Creek. By morning, the town was buzzing, gossip spreading like wildfire through diners, churches, and the local hardware store. Marcus felt the weight of every stare as he walked to the courthouse, his robe waiting to transform him into someone untouchable, at least for a few hours. But the whispers followed. He's got nerve. Pressing charges. Carl's just saying what everyone thinks. A judge like that, what's he doing here? In his chambers, Marcus stared at the case file for Carl's vandalism charge. The footage was damning, but Willow Creek's biases ran deep. Would a jury see the truth? Or would they see Marcus as the outsider, the troublemaker? He'd faced this before, courts where his skin or his identity overshadowed his gavel. But this was personal, a fight for his home, his dignity. Ethan texted, checking in, you holding up? Town's talking, but I'm proud of you. Marcus smiled, the words a balm. Ethan had become his anchor, his reason to keep fighting. But the fear lingered. What if Carl's hatred escalated? What if Ethan got hurt? That afternoon, Marcus met with the prosecutor, a young woman named Sarah who'd always treated him with respect. We've got a strong case, she said, reviewing the footage. But Carl's got friends. The jury pool, it's tricky. I know, Marcus said. Just do your best. Back home, he found Ethan on his porch, a six-pack of beer in hand. Thought we could use a break, Ethan said, his smile tentative. They sat on the steps. The evening cool, the neighborhood quiet for once. Marcus took a sip, the cold bitterness grounding him. I'm scared, he admitted, the words slipping out. Not just of Carl, of what this town could do to us. Ethan's hand found his, steady and warm. We're stronger than them, Marcus. Together. The word together hung between them, a promise and a risk. Marcus wanted to believe it, but the memory of the brick, the graffiti, loomed large. He leaned in, kissing Ethan softly, letting the moment drown out the fear. For now, it was enough. The next day, Carl's bail hearing was packed. Marcus didn't preside. Ethics demanded he recuse himself, but he sat in the gallery, his presence a statement. Carl stood in an ill-fitting suit, his defiance gone, replaced by a nervous twitch. The judge, an older white man from a neighboring county, set bail at $5,000. Carl's wife, Linda, glared at Marcus as she paid, her lips a thin line. Outside, Ethan waited, his face tense. How'd it go? He's out, Marcus said, but he knows we're watching. That night, the cameras caught Carl again, lurking near Marcus's driveway. No paint this time, just a long, menacing stare. Marcus's blood ran cold. He showed the footage to Sarah, who filed for a restraining order. He's escalating, she warned. Be careful. Marcus nodded, but careful wasn't enough. He needed to end this. He started digging into Carl's past public records, old cases. What he found was a pattern: minor assaults, or fights, a history of hate-fueled outbursts. Carl wasn't just a bigot. He was a ticking bomb. Ethan insisted on staying over, sleeping on the couch despite Marcus's protests. I'm not leaving you alone, he said, his voice firm. Marcus didn't argue, grateful for the company. They talked late into the night, sharing stories of their past, Marcus's childhood in foster care, Ethan's struggle to come out to his conservative family. Each revelation drew them closer, their bond a quiet rebellion against the town's hostility. But the next morning, Marcus woke to a new horror. His front lawn was littered with flyers, each one a vile rant against his kind. The words were Carl's, but the distribution suggested others were involved. Marcus's heart sank. This wasn't just one man's hate, Anna Maria, it was a town turning against him. He called Sarah, who promised to investigate. "We'll add harassment to the charges," she said. But Marcus knew the truth. Evidence could only do so much in a place where prejudice ran deeper than justice. As he cleaned up the flyers, Ethan at his side, Marcus made a decision. He wouldn't run, but he wouldn't hide either. He'd face Carl, face the town, and show them who he was, not just a black man, not just a gay man, but a judge who'd fought for fairness his entire life. And with Ethan beside him, he felt ready. The flyers were only the beginning. By the end of the week, Marcus's inbox was flooded with anonymous emails, threats, slurs, demands he leave Willow Creek. His phone buzzed with blocked numbers, voicemails hissing venom. Each attack chipped away at his resolve. But Ethan's presence kept him grounded. They'd fallen into a rhythm: shared dinners, late-night talks, stolen kisses that felt like defiance in the face of hate. In court, Marcus maintained his composure, but the strain was visible. Colleagues noticed his drawn face, the tension in his shoulders. Sarah, the prosecutor, pulled him aside after a hearing. "We've traced some of the flyers," she said. "Carl's not acting alone. There's a group, small, but vocal. They're calling themselves concerned citizens." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Vigilantes." "Pretty much," Sarah said. "We're building a case. But it's slow. These people know how to cover their tracks." That night, Marcus and Ethan sat at his kitchen table, poring over the evidence. The security footage, the flyers, the email set was enough to make a case, but not enough to change hearts. "We need to go public," Ethan said, his voice urgent. "Show the town what's happening. Shame them into doing the right thing." Marcus hesitated. Going public meant exposing himself further, inviting more hate. But Ethan's eyes, fierce with conviction, swayed him. "All right," he said, "but we do it carefully." They contacted a local reporter, a young woman named Mia who'd written about Marcus's appointment to the bench 2 years ago. She met them at Ethan's bookstore, her notebook open, her expression grim as they showed her the evidence. "This is big," she said, "but it's risky. The town's divided. Some will back you, but others, they'll double down." "Do it," Marcus said. "I'm done hiding." The article hit the local paper's website the next morning. A stark headline: "Judge targeted in hate campaign." It detailed Carl's actions, the flyers, the threats, with stills from the security footage. By noon, it was shared across X, sparking heated debates. Some posts called Marcus a hero. Others branded him a troublemaker. Willow Creek was splitting open, its ugliness laid bare. Carl's response was swift. That evening, a crowd gathered outside Marcus's house, maybe a dozen people, led by Carl and his wife, Linda. They held signs: "Protect our values. No place for sin." Marcus watched from his window, Ethan at his side, his heart pounding. "This is what they want," he said, "to scare me out." "Then don't let them," Ethan said, squeezing his hand. "We call the sheriff. We stand our ground." Sheriff Daniels arrived, dispersing the crowd with warnings, but no arrests. Carl's smirk as he left told Marcus everything. This was far from over. That night, Marcus and Ethan stayed up, planning. They'd hold a community meeting, invite the town to hear their side. It was a gamble, but silence hadn't worked. The meeting was set for the community center, a squat brick building by the town square. Marcus spent the day preparing, his nerves fraying. Ethan helped, drafting flyers, calling allies. A few locals, mostly younger, like Mia, and a teacher named Javier, promised to speak in support. But Marcus knew the room would be hostile. When the day came, the center was packed. Marcus stood at the podium, Ethan beside him, facing a sea of faces, some curious, some angry. Carl sat in the front row, his arms crossed, his sneer a challenge. Marcus took a breath, his voice steady despite the fear clawing at him. "I'm Judge Marcus Grant," he began. "I've served this town for 2 years, upholding the law fairly. But I'm also a black man, a gay man, and someone in this town, someone here thinks that makes me less than human." The room went silent, the weight of his words sinking in. He told his story: the car, the threats, the flyers. He showed the footage, Carl's face clear on the projector. Murmurs rippled through the crowd, some shocked, others defensive. Carl stood, his voice loud. "You don't belong here. You're tearing this town apart with your lifestyle." Ethan stepped forward, his voice cutting through. "No, Carl. You're tearing it apart with your hate. Marcus is a good man, a better man than you'll ever be." The room erupted, voices clashing, support, anger, confusion. Marcus felt Ethan's hand on his back, a quiet strength. He raised his voice, calling for calm. "I'm not leaving," he said. "This is my home, and I believe in this town, even if some of you don't believe in me." As the meeting ended, some approached Marcus, offering support. Others left with Carl, their faces hard. But something had shifted. The truth was out, and Willow Creek had to face it. The community meeting left Marcus drained but resolute. Support had come small, scattered, but real. Javier, the teacher, started a petition for stronger hate crime laws. Mia's articles kept the pressure on, her latest piece profiling Marcus's career, humanizing him in a way the town couldn't ignore. But Carl's group grew bolder, their flyers now appearing at the school, the library, even Ethan's bookstore. Marcus and Ethan spent their evenings strategizing, their bond deepening with each shared fear and hope. One night, as they cooked dinner together, Ethan paused, his knife hovering over a tomato. "I love you," he said, the words simple but heavy. Marcus froze, the weight of it overwhelming. He'd loved before, but never like this, open, raw, in the face of danger. "I love you too," he said, his voice thick. They kissed, the kitchen warm with the scent of garlic and possibility. But the moment was cut short by a thud against the window. A rock, wrapped in a note. "You're next." Marcus's heart raced, but he refused to call the sheriff again. Instead, he and Ethan checked the cameras, catching a hooded figure fleeing. Not Carl, but someone younger, faster. The concerned citizens were growing, and Marcus knew they had to act fast. He met with Sarah the next day, laying out the new evidence. "We need to move on Carl's trial," he urged, "before this gets worse." Sarah nodded. "We're pushing for harassment and vandalism. Maybe conspiracy if we can tie him to the group. But Marcus, the jury's still a wild card." The trial was set for 2 weeks later. Marcus threw himself into preparation, helping Sarah build the case while maintaining his own docket. Ethan was his rock, handling the bookstore while organizing community support. They held a second meeting, smaller but warmer, with allies like Javier and Mia speaking passionately. A few older residents, including a retired pastor named Ellen, joined, their support a quiet rebuke to Carl's rhetoric. But the night before the trial, disaster struck. Marcus woke to the smell of smoke. His backyard was ablaze, a makeshift firebomb scorching his fence. He and Ethan grabbed extinguishers, dousing the flames before the fire department arrived. The cameras caught nothing. Cloud cover had obscured the figure. Marcus's hands shook as he surveyed the damage. Ethan's arm around him. "They're trying to break us," Ethan said, his voice fierce. "Don't let them." Marcus nodded, but fear gnawed at him. He was a judge, sworn to uphold justice. Yet his own safety hung by a thread. The next morning, he walked into court, his head high despite the exhaustion. Carl's trial was his chance to fight back, not just for himself, but for Ethan, for every person Willow Creek had pushed to the margins. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension. Sarah presented the evidence footage. Flyers, emails methodically, her voice steady. Carl's lawyer, a slick out-of-towner, argued it was all circumstantial, that Carl was a victim of a witch hunt. But Marcus saw the jury's faces shift as the footage played. Carl's sneer unmistakable. When Carl took the stand, he played the part of a misunderstood patriot. "I'm protecting my town," he said, his voice loud. "People like him don't belong here." Sarah didn't flinch. "People like him," she pressed. "You mean a black man, a gay man, or a judge who's served this community with integrity?" The room went quiet, Carl's face reddening. He stammered, his composure cracking. Marcus watched from the gallery, his heart pounding. This was a moment of truth. The jury deliberated for hours. Marcus waited with Ethan at the bookstore, their hands clasped under the counter. When the call came, they drove to the courthouse, the town square eerily quiet. Inside, the verdict was read, guilty on vandalism and harassment. Sentencing would come later. But Carl's face was ashen, his bravado gone. As they left, Ethan squeezed Marcus's hand. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," Marcus corrected, a small smile breaking through. But he knew the fight wasn't over. Carl was one man. The town's heart was another battle. Carl's conviction was a victory, but it came at a cost. The concerned citizens didn't stop. Flyers still appeared, though less frequently, and Marcus's cameras caught shadowy figures watching his house at night. The town was split. Some rallied behind Marcus, leaving notes of support on his doorstep. Others shunned him, their silence louder than words. Marcus and Ethan grew closer, their love a quiet rebellion. They spent evenings at the bookstore, planning a community event to promote inclusion. Javier and Mia helped, recruiting allies, while Ellen, the retired pastor, offered to host a discussion at her church. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. Sentencing day arrived, the courtroom tense. Carl stood, his head bowed, as the judge, another out-of-county appointee, read the sentence: 6 months in jail, 3 years probation, and a hefty fine. Linda sobbed in the gallery, but Carl's face was blank, his fight drained. Marcus felt no joy, only relief. Justice had been served, but it hadn't erased the hate. Outside, reporters swarmed, Mia among them. "Judge Grant," she called. "What's next for you?" Marcus paused, Ethan at his side. "I'm staying," he said. "This is my home, and I'll keep fighting for it to be a home for everyone." The words sparked cheers from some, glares from others. As they walked away, Ethan whispered, "You're incredible." Marcus smiled, but the weight lingered. That night, they hosted a small gathering at Marcus's house. Javier, Mia, Ellen, and a few others. The mood was hopeful, laughter mingling with serious talk of change. Ethan proposed a book club focused on diversity, and Ellen suggested a town-wide forum. Marcus felt a spark of hope, fragile but real. But late that night, as the guests left, a brick crashed through Marcus's window, glass shattering across the living room. A note was tied to it. You won't win. Ethan pulled Marcus close, his voice fierce. We call the sheriff. Now. The sheriff arrived, taking the note as evidence. But Marcus saw the doubt in his eyes. This wasn't Carl, it was someone else. Someone emboldened by his rhetoric. The concerned citizens were still out there, and Marcus knew they wouldn't stop. He and Ethan cleaned up the glass, their silence heavy. Maybe you were right, Marcus said finally. Maybe I should leave. Ethan shook his head. No. We fight. Together. The next day, Marcus met with Sarah and Sheriff Daniels, demanding action. This is a hate group, he said. You need to investigate, not just react. Daniels sighed. We're trying, Judge. But these folks, they're slippery. Then try harder. Marcus snapped. He was done with excuses. He returned home, where Ethan was waiting. A plan forming. We go bigger, Ethan said. A rally. Show the town what inclusion looks like. Marcus hesitated, the risks flashing through his mind. But Ethan's conviction was infectious. They spent days organizing, rallying allies, spreading the word through Mia's articles and ex-posts. The rally was set for the town square, a bold stand in the heart of Willow Creek. The day came, crisp and clear. Hundreds gathered, more than Marcus had expected. Javier spoke first, his voice ringing with passion. Ellen followed, her words gentle but firm, calling for love over hate. When Marcus took the stage, the crowd hushed. He looked out, seeing Ethan's proud smile, and found his voice. I'm Marcus Grant, he said. A judge, a black man, a gay man. I've been attacked, threatened, told to leave. But I'm here, and I'm asking you to stand with Minute just for me, but for everyone who's been made to feel less than. The applause was tentative at first, then thunderous. Not everyone clapped, some stood stone-faced, but Marcus felt the tide shifting. Ethan joined him, their hands clasped, a quiet defiance. For the first time, Marcus believed Willow Creek could change. The rally marked a turning point, but not an end. The concerned citizens faded, their flyers rarer, their threats quieter. Sheriff Daniels, under pressure from Mia's reporting and public outcry, launched a deeper investigation, arresting 2 of Carl's associates for the brick incident. The town wasn't healed, but it was waking up. Marcus and Ethan settled into a new normal. They were open now, holding hands in public, their love a statement. The bookstore became a hub for inclusion book clubs, forums, even a small pride event that drew allies from neighboring towns. Ellen's church hosted discussions, and Javier's students started a diversity club at the school. Change was slow, but it was real. One evening, months later, Marcus sat on his porch, Ethan beside him, the neighborhood quiet. His car was repaired, the graffiti gone, though the scars lingered in his memory. Carl was still in jail, his influence waning. Linda had moved away, her house for sale. Willow Creek was changing, one heart at a time. I was wrong, Marcus said, his voice soft. I thought I had to fight alone. Ethan smiled, leaning against him. You never will again. Marcus looked out at the street, the porch lights glowing, and felt something he hadn't in years, peace. He'd come to Willow Creek seeking a home, and despite the hate, he'd found one not just in the town, but in Ethan, in the allies who'd stood with them, in the fight they'd won together. The stars above were bright, the air cool. Marcus took Ethan's hand, their fingers intertwining. We did good, he said. We did, Ethan agreed. And we're just getting started. They sat there, the future uncertain, but theirs to shape. Marcus was a judge, a black man, A gay man and now. A man who'd fought for his place and won. Not just for himself, but for everyone who'd ever felt unwelcome. Willow Creek wasn't perfect, but it was home. And with Ethan by his side, Marcus knew they could face anything.